I'm here with these Swedish ambassadors, also known as fjord horses, and they want me to tell you that they said, welcome to Gotenborg. So I'm in the Slotsskogen, which is like the castle forest. If I'm translating Swedish into Norwegian into English, I think that's what it means. In the 19th century, they created this beautiful free park, and there's fjord horses and reindeer and ducks and geese and all sorts of things. And it's really beautiful to see these animals, but it's also kind of sad. They need to be able to roam free and explore, even though I'm sure they have all their basic needs met here. They also need some adventure. And that's exactly how I feel when I'm in Oslo. I'm getting all my basic needs met. I have a really nice life there, but I also need the element of adventure and exploration. So I hopped on the bus and I came to Gothenborg, Sweden. And I texted my Kjæresten, as we say in Norwegian, this morning, and he said, oh, you made it to Gothenborg safely. And he wrote, Gothenborg, you're now in the city of Ace of Base, the band of my first album I ever bought in my childhood. Listen to the banger Happy Nation whilst roaming the streets. Okay, so I'm just pulling up on YouTube, banger Happy Nation. Oh, I guess banger was a descriptive word, and actually the name of the song is Happy Nation. Let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, I can just see my 6'4", 38-year-old guy I'm dating dancing around in his bedroom to that song as a kid. Oh, and I try not to be too snobby about Scandinavian choice of music. Well, I just prefer opera over pop music. And speaking of opera, well, opera is why I'm in Gothenburg today. There's a wonderful opera by Benjamin Britten called Peter Grimes, and they're performing it tonight at the Gothenburg Opera. And he thinks that he needs to go conquer the world in order to get the approval of his small town. And as a result, he does some very morally debunked things, hurts people. There's inquisitions into who he is and what he's doing. And in the end, he goes a bit crazy. And I think those stories apply to all of us in some way, shape, or form. How the society, the families, the communities we grow up in either support us and build us up or reject us and cast us out and, throw us to the wolves. So this is the Slotsskogen, and I have absolutely no agenda for today. So I'm just going to walk around the city and we see what we see. Let's go. Okay, guys, so now I'm up at Skansen, or the King's Sconce. It's a fort that's over 400 years old, and I can only imagine that bringing all these heavy stones up this high hill was extremely difficult back in the day. And likewise, in Peter Grimes, Peter has a woman that loves him very much, and she wants to marry him and, have a life and family with him. But he can't accept her love. He feels like before he can do all of that, he has to prove himself, and he has to go and have the biggest haul of fish ever. And it just makes me think, as I'm up here on this hill at this fort, that we often think we have to erect big monuments to ourselves to prove that we're worthy, whether it's through career or whatever. And really, people that love us already, they love us already, and we don't have to do anything to prove their love or earn their love. And it just seems to me like in a world full of super lonely people, that the loneliest of us all are the ones that, feel like they have to do something to earn love, whether it's Peter in the opera or whether it's, thinking we have to build some sort of fort, to prove our strength, I think really, if somebody loves you, all you have to do is just accept their love. Anyway, that's something that Britain didn't address in Peter Grimes, is how he really could have just accepted her love. I wish it was part of the opera, but it's not, so consider it added in now. And behind me here, there's this 75, 80-year-old couple with their little dog, and it took them forever to get up the hill. I saw them when I started, and maybe 20 minutes later, they finally got up this hill. And that's a good time for a 75, 80-year-old couple, but I think it's just so sweet that they're still going on dates with their dog, holding hands and, having a romantic life together. And I want that for myself when I'm their age. I think that's just adorable. But actually, I'm just leaving the fort now, and I see a church in the background. So let's go see if we can find it down on the ground and go inside. I hear organ music and I see a beautiful church. This is King Oskar Frederik's kyrka. It was named after the King of Sweden. It was inaugurated Easter Sunday, 1893. It's super beautiful on the inside and the out. And my favorite thing about this church is when I went in, they had this brick wall. It was very small, but you know how every brick has like the holes, the slots inside them where they put the, what do you call it, plaster to keep the bricks together and everything. So inside those slots, you can write down a prayer and put it inside the brick, and then the prayer is preserved on the piece of paper within the brick, and it's like a wall of prayer. And I just thought that was a really beautiful thing. I put in a little prayer myself. I'm not going to say what it was, but I know. And maybe if I come back to Gotenborg in 10, 20 years from now, I'll see that wall of prayers and I'll know that, you know, first of all, it'll be much bigger. And second of all, one of my prayers will be in it from 2025. Okay, here we are in the Klippans neighborhood of Gotenborg, and this little area is where all the old sailboats and boats would have come in with their fish hauls like 100 years ago, and it's still a sailboat harbor today. And I can just say that in this area, I learned a difference between Norway and Sweden. So there are some people that you might be able to still see in the background that were day drinking and quite a bit drunk, and they wanted to photobomb the film, and that's absolutely never happened in Norway. Are du svensk?
Vi är det tuffaste jävla kriminella.
But anyway, this is very much so the kind of area that Peter Grimes would have brought his fish into and that he would have left from. And so as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about how Peter Grimes came from this community that didn't really get him. And so he'd go out to sea and be anonymous. And he took these boys out with him so that he could, you know, catch his big loads of fish and, you know, win the day so he could go have his bride. But, you know, while he was out there unmonitored and anonymous, he treated them pretty badly. We all have that temptation to find ways to go out to the sea like Peter Grimes did and kind of get drowned in our ambition, and along the way, you know, not always say the best thing, treat people the best, and maybe not have the most integrity. And, you know, I found the older I get that it always comes to bite you in the ass, just like it did with Peter Grimes when he would come back into shore. It didn't matter how many fish he caught. They always wanted to know, hey, where are those boys at, you know, that you took with you? They're not here anymore. Where are they? Just for example, when I was in high school, I was really bad at math, and I cheated quite a bit, especially my senior year of high school, so that I could just graduate and get the hell out of Fort Oaks, North Carolina. And to this day, I have nightmares where I have to go back and repeat all 4 years of high school because I cheated on my senior math exams. So, you know, I think that we can go out to sea, we can be anonymous all we want, but it always comes to roost when we come back into society and around other people. So we just left the Klippa, the boat harbor where people would bring the fish in, and now we're at the Feska korka, or the fish church. And if you look at the top, there are actually tiles coming down the top that look like fish scales. If you think about it, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, it would make sense for people to call a fish market a fish church, because in a way, they kind of had to worship fish up here in Scandinavia. I mean, there was no real marketable goods or resources except the sea, and they hadn't found oil yet. And so these people survived off of fish and potatoes. So I can only imagine that Peter Grimes dreamed of bringing in such a large fish haul that he could have created a fish church like this that people would flock to and eat his delicious fish and pay him a nice bounty so that he could finally have his externally gained self-esteem and marry his woman. And as I'm standing here outside the Feska kyrka, I'm just thinking about how Peter Grimes' community made him feel so bad about himself that he thought he had to go conquer the world in order to be worthy of having a normal family life. And, you know, it's no secret that Benjamin Britten, the guy that wrote the opera, was openly gay, had a partner named Peter Pears, who was a very successful opera singer. They worked together to create many of Britten's operas. And so there's this obvious subtext about, you know, coming out that's all throughout the opera. And I just think about how many young teenagers get told, you know, when their family finds out that they're gay, that, you know, that they're sinful, that they're bad. And it does create a complex where you feel like, okay, if I'm not good enough as I am, as a person, then I do have to go out and do something externally great in order to feel good enough. If Peter Grimes wasn't told about how sinful he was, how bad he was, how much he didn't fit in, he may never have needed to go out to sea with those boys and did whatever he did to them. You know, maybe he could have just been okay, you know, in this town and just found a guy his own age rather than, you know, ruining this woman's wife that he was trying to marry while messing around with these boys and allegedly killing them and all these things. You know, it just gets really wonky when a community of people start telling other people how to live life. There's this old principle called live and let live that I learned from a certain group of people in my early 20s. And I think it's true. I think that unless, you know, somebody is like super dangerous to other people, then, you know, they should just be allowed to live their life. And I think Peter Grimes only became dangerous once he wasn't allowed to be himself, and he started trying to push parts of himself down. And that's when things started getting cruel toward those boys. So, you know, Peter Grimes never had his fish market. He never had his day, but he never really needed to. All he needed was for those people to just accept him and appreciate him for who he was. So, I don't know. Maybe the metaphor is going too deep, but Gotenborg seems to be the perfect place to set Peter Grimes. So, let's see. We've been all over the city. I think we have just a couple more stops, and then it's time for the opera. Let's go. So this is the Nygata in the Haga district of Gothenburg. And it very much makes me think of the townspeople in Peter Grimes, because it's an old city feel, but there's a lot of people around, and there's very much like a group atmosphere sort of vibe. And the thing that the townspeople remind me of in Peter Grimes is the power of judgment and the power of us versus them. And I'm not saying a good kind of power. You know, they all get together and they basically decide Peter Grimes is not to be trusted. He needs to be reined in. He needs to be held back. We need to tell him what to do, how to behave, how to think, how to feel. They basically just judge him from the very outset of the opera. We know that he's done something not quite right in the past, but their intense scrutiny of him and judgment of him just puts oil on the fire. And so I'm not saying that everyone should get a pass. Some things should be judged and some people should be taken out of society. But, you know, I think in small towns especially, you know, it's like you have to be just like us. And if you don't fit in, that's it. You know, you either have to leave or you have to change and fit in our box. The second one didn't work for me, so I knew that I was going to have to leave. And, you know, it's painful. It's painful to not fit in, to know you have to leave your family in order to even have a chance of being yourself. And then, you know, it's like once you don't have that support system anymore, you make a ton of mistakes, just like Peter Grimes did. And just another point, homie, it's not just about like me being gay. You know, it also happened with the church I grew up in. The church literally split in half over the concept of evolution when I was in middle school. And, you know, half the church was for it, half the church was against it. And all of a sudden overnight, I was expected to think that people I had grown up with and played every Sunday, Wednesday night with for 10, 12 years were supposed to be bad people just because their parents didn't agree with what my parents agreed with. So I think us humans do this whole group mentality, us versus them thing all the time over all sorts of different issues. And, you know, maybe Peter Grimes and Benjamin Britten are telling us to cut it out, quit doing it, and find a better way. Because in the end, the poor guy goes absolutely crazy. Yes, we're not sure if he's a villain or if he's a victim or what he is, but, you know, he has this mad scene at the end of the opera. And he goes absolutely Looney Tunes and nutso. And it's all because of the pressure. All right, after a long but rewarding day of vlogging, here we are at the Gothenburg Opera, which ironically is right across the street from Captain of Industry, and it's right along the seawall. So it's you got a 3-in-1 right here. Anyway, I'm looking forward to hearing Peter Grimes tonight, and I'll report back on the flip side. Well, the opera is over, and actually so is Gothenburg. I actually forgot to vlog last night. I was so tired after the opera ended, and then this morning I was a bit late to catch the bus. So actually I'm back in Oslo. This is one of my favorite spots on the entire earth, the little fjord beside where I live in a small little suburb of Oslo. But at any rate, there are two final things that I want to share with you guys about the trip. The first was that yesterday I enjoyed the most wonderful Fika. And Fika is a Swedish tradition where at mid-afternoon you sit down, normally with a friend, you have some coffee, you tea, and you have a huge, huge pastry. And the cinnamon roll I got was literally as big as an entire dinner plate. I ate half of it for the snack, and then I actually ate the other half for dinner. I didn't even have a normal dinner yesterday. But yeah, I like Fika. I could get used to that. And I think that if I lived in Gotenborg and I had those cinnamon rolls at my disposal all the time, I would be a very large man. But the second thing that I wanted to share with y'all about the trip is, you know, last night I was talking about Peter Grimes and how the opera is all about the power of a community to either lift us up or exclude us, and what happens when we feel excluded, and how that exclusion, which often comes about as a sort of helpful pressure to conform actually makes us often do the very things that the people wanting us to conform don't want us to do. And, you know, it's funny, I got a phone call on the bus ride back home from Gotenborg, and a friend of mine from childhood called to let me know that someone that grew up with us in our church had passed away. And, you know, I just got to thinking about all of the men that I went to school with in my early years that are either in jail or are addicted to drugs or have passed on. And, you know, I kind of always thought that I was the Peter Grimes character because, you know, I was gay, I was different. But I think a lot of people in my childhood besides me felt like Peter Grimes also, and they had their ways of coping with it. And I just today I feel like really I was just protected by angels throughout my life, that for some reason, you know, my coping mechanisms were hiding out in academia and getting a PhD rather than, you know, finding fentanyl. And how lucky and blessed am I to have my safe little life here in Oslo. It might not always be the most interesting life in the world, but it's safe and I'm protected. And I just feel like such a winner, like such a lottery winner, that I get to have life and live life. You know, at the end of Peter Grimes, they actually judge him to the point that he goes crazy. And then someone very compassionately says, Peter Grimes, why don't you just go out there and sail your boat out into the sea so far that we can't rescue you? And why don't you just sink the boat? And the implication being, you're a worthless fuck. Why don't you just go kill yourself? And apparently, a lot of the guys that I went to school with got that message. And for some reason, I didn't. For some reason, I'm still here. And so maybe I'm actually not a Peter Grimes after all. Maybe maybe I don't identify with the opera as strongly as I thought I did 24 hours ago. My heart's a little heavy today as I got that news, you know, but it also gave me a lot of gratitude for the safe, peaceful life that I have. And it's not been an easy road for me. I have had to spend a lot of time and money and resources to kind of get myself to a healthy place that maybe not everyone has had to do, but I'm still here, and I'm still, you know, incredibly privileged to be alive and human, and to be going every day just a little bit closer to a more authentic version of Patrick Parker. So on that sort of heavy note, this concludes my opera marathon binge of February, March, April 2025. If you want to see some other videos of places that I visited while I was looking at different operas around Europe, you can check out videos here. You can subscribe down here. And as they say in Swedish for goodbye, hej då!